Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. What happens when a wife confesses her affair with her husband's best friend on his birthday, expecting forgiveness, only to discover he's known for weeks and has been quietly preparing divorce papers the entire time? When I told Adrian the truth over birthday cake, thinking my honesty would save our marriage, he calmly reached into his jacket and handed me a folder that proved he'd been 5 steps ahead all along. Now, standing in the hospital cafeteria with those papers in my hands and his entire family watching, I realize my confession wasn't brave. It was my final mistake. I woke up that Thursday morning with a knot in my stomach that had been there for weeks. The guilt was eating me alive. Every time I looked at Adrian, every time he smiled at Owen over breakfast, every time he kissed me goodbye before work, I felt like I was drowning in my own lies. The affair with Kyle had been a mistake, a terrible, stupid mistake that had lasted 3 months before I finally came to my senses and ended it. Kyle was Adrian's best friend from college. They'd been close for 15 years. And I'd destroyed that friendship. I'd destroyed everything, but I was going to fix it. I was going to be honest. I found Adrian in the kitchen that morning, already dressed for work, making coffee in that methodical way he did everything. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He just poured his coffee into his travel mug, the blue one he always used. I noticed my mug, the red one, was sitting on the opposite counter. We used to keep them side by side. I asked him if he wanted breakfast. He said no, he'd grab something at work. His voice was flat, emotionless. I tried to make conversation about his birthday coming up on Saturday. I said I'd made a reservation at his favorite restaurant, that his parents and Marcus were coming, that it would be nice to have everyone together. He said that sounded fine. Just fine. Not good, not great. Fine. I asked if he was okay. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his eyes made my breath catch. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was something colder, something like resignation. He said he was fine. Then he picked up his coffee and his laptop bag and told me he'd be home late. He had meetings all day. Owen came bouncing down the stairs in his dinosaur pajamas, asking for pancakes. I forced a smile and started pulling out the ingredients. Adrian kissed Owen on the top of his head, told him to have a good day at school, and left without saying goodbye to me. After the door closed, Owen looked up at me with those big hazel eyes, Adrian's eyes, and asked why Daddy seemed sad. I told him Daddy was just tired from work. Owen seemed to accept that, but I could tell he knew something was wrong. Kids always know. I got Owen ready for school and dropped him off, then drove to my office at the pharmaceutical company where I worked as a sales rep. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about Adrian's face that morning, that cold, resigned look. During my lunch break, I found Rachel in the break room. Rachel was my work friend, the person I'd confided in about the affair when it first started. She'd been surprisingly non-judgmental, which I appreciated. She said these things happened, that marriages went through rough patches. I told her I'd decided to confess, that I was going to tell Adrian the truth at his birthday dinner on Saturday. She looked surprised. She asked if I was sure that was a good idea. I said yes, I was sure. I said honesty was the only way to heal, that keeping this secret was killing me, that Adrian deserved to know the truth. Rachel said that was very brave. She said most people wouldn't have the courage to confess. I felt a little surge of pride at that. Brave. That's what I was being. Brave and honest. I asked her if she thought Adrian would forgive me. She said if he really loved me, he would. She said everyone makes mistakes, and what mattered was that I was owning up to it. I spent the rest of the afternoon rehearsing what I'd say. I'd tell him that I'd been lonely, that he'd been working so much, that I'd felt neglected. I'd explain that Kyle had been there, had paid attention to me, had made me feel seen. I'd emphasize that it was over, that I regretted it deeply, that I wanted to fix our marriage. I'd do it at the dinner, in front of family. That way, he'd see how serious I was. That way, there would be people there to support us both through the initial shock. That way, he couldn't just walk away. He'd have to stay and talk it through. That evening, I texted my sister, Sienna. I'm going to tell him on Saturday. At the birthday dinner. It's the right thing to do. She texted back, Are you sure? That's a big moment. I did not like the way he said it, calm and plain. I wanted heat. I wanted him to try to win me like in a movie. I told myself his calm was not maturity but absence. I told myself calm men are cowardly. This idea felt good and soft, like a blanket. I mentioned that Luca said I had a great laugh. I said it in a light voice, the way a person shares harmless news. Neil rinsed the cutting board, then set it to dry. He asked if we could keep other names out of our kitchen. I said he always wanted me to be quiet. He said he wanted respect. I said respect was a cage. He did not take the bait. He never took the bait. This used to soothe me. Now it burned me because I needed a villain to explain my choices. I walked down the hall and opened our bedroom. The lamp flickered. The air smelled faintly like perfume from earlier in the night. I let the mirror see me. I told the mirror I looked great for a tired mother with a job. I told myself I had earned a night out. I told myself I had earned Luca's attention. I told myself I had earned more than quiet rooms and stacked plates. When I heard Niall's steps, I lay down facing the wall and said we did not need to talk anymore. He stood in the doorway and asked if I was safe when I was out. I said he was being dramatic. He said he worried. I said he should stop controlling me. He asked if I would like to talk with someone together. I said he wanted an audience to make me look unstable. He said no, he wanted help. I said he should help himself. He nodded and turned away. I wanted him to beg. He did not. The absence of begging felt like a new insult. He took the extra pillow from the closet. I listened to the hallway sounds, the small domestic ones that mean life is happening, the soft click of a light switch, the whisper of a door easing open, the hush of feet on carpet. I squeezed my eyes until little waves of light moved under my eyelids. I reached for my phone and typed a message to my friend Mari. I told her Neil was starting a war and that I needed another night out to feel normal. She sent back hearts and a flame. I liked that. It made me feel chosen. The house grew quiet. I could just hear the fridge hum and the faint traffic outside. I stared into the dark and told myself I was the one who kept fun alive, and that he had turned into a hall monitor with a wedding ring. I told myself a child needs a happy mother, even if that mother needs late nights. I told myself this many times. The words felt smooth with use. From the hallway, I heard the guest room door move. The latch pressed and settled into place with a neat little click, like a sentence ending. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and felt my chest tighten in a way that was not fear, not yet, but close to it. I did not get up. I typed another message to Mari and said tomorrow I would post something bright so everyone would see I was fine. Then I set the phone on my chest and waited for nothing to happen. The small private hook was the sound of that latch, the tidy click that said the night was over and something else had begun. I arrived at the office wearing bright lipstick and a fixed smile. The open-plan floor was already busy. Screens glowed, coffee steamed, and the big printer coughed now and then. I set my tote down like I was placing a flag. I told myself I would control the story today. I would be the lively wife with a cold husband, not the woman who stayed out. I greeted my row and said traffic was unkind. Someone said they saw a rooftop video with my name tagged. I laughed and said a bar always tags regulars. I felt the attention soak into my skin like warm light. At my desk, I opened a spreadsheet and stared at tidy cells that meant nothing to my mood. I told the team that my husband did not understand modern networking. I said, dancing at a bar was not a crime. Heads nodded because that was easy. A younger analyst asked if my husband felt insecure. I said he tried to police my time, and I was tired of being managed at home and at work. People laughed softly. I watched a reflection of myself in the screen and decided I looked strong. Inside, I was planning the next post that would win the day. A teammate scrolled through her phone and mentioned a new reel from the rooftop. I leaned in like I did not care, and then cared a lot. The clip showed a raised glass and the edge of my smile. The caption said, "Life after rules," which was Marie's phrase. I explained that it was a joke and that friends always made jokes when a husband got rigid. I said, "A marriage dies if no one feeds it fun." The phrase sounded wise, so I repeated it again. A few people agreed because agreement is polite, and I took that as proof. Damien walked by with his coffee and a neutral face. He paused and asked if I had a minute after I finished a task. He said it lightly, but I could hear the weight under it. I said of course, and joked that I needed approval for my lipstick budget. He did not laugh. I told myself, managers hate joy. When he left, I sent Mari a message and asked her to polish a caption about resilience. She sent back a draft with little fire emojis. I added a heart and posted it to my story, with a boomerang of clinking mugs in the break area. Slack noises came in like soft rain. Someone dropped a thread with the rooftop clip. Comments piled up with half smiles. I typed a smiling face as if it were nothing. Then I felt a chill and could not name it. I checked the shared family calendar on my phone, more from habit than interest. A new block had appeared on Niall's entries, small and grey, repeating every week at the same time. It read, "Meeting, personal." I told myself it was a school thing and not worth attention. I took a breath and looked away. Damien stopped by again and asked if we could grab a quick word in the small glass room by HR. He said it would be brief. I stood, smoothed my skirt, and told my row that a good soldier always meets with command. In the glass room, the air felt careful. Ms. Byrne from HR was already there with a closed notebook. Damien said he wanted to check in because my online posts were getting attention, some of it tied to the company tag on my profile. He said he respected my private life, but asked that I consider the firm's image. Ms. Byrne added a note about policy and asked that I keep personal conflicts off public threads. I smiled and said I understood completely. Inside, I called it an old-fashioned view. I explained that I was advocating for women who want joy. I said my husband was rigid and that my posts were about empowerment. Ms. Byrne nodded and repeated the phrase, "Keep private things private." Damien said the work itself was fine and asked that we keep it boring around here. I promised that everything would be quiet. I had no plan to make it quiet. I only wanted them to nod so I could leave. When I returned to my desk, I saw 2 unread messages from Mari. One said the clip was doing numbers. The second said a playgroup mom had commented with a question mark. I told Mari to reply with a bright line about taking up space. She sent a reply and then sent me a screenshot. The thread looked messy and alive. I felt a pulse of excitement and then a small stab of fear that felt like a needle against paper. My phone buzzed on the desk, the screen lit with a call that said private. The sound was muted from a setting I forgot to change after last night. I watched it ring out without moving. I told myself it was a spam call and not worth a pause. Then I pictured Niall's calm face and the recurring meeting, personal block, and I felt annoyed that he could place neat boxes on a week while I had to carry a whole mood. I told myself the world was unfair to women and that this was proof. A coworker asked if I was okay because I had stared at the ringing phone without touching it. I said I was fine and that my husband liked to check up on me too much. She made a face that wanted to be kind. I saw doubt in it and hated that. I typed a message to Paula, my mother, and told her the company was conservative and did not understand modern couples. She replied that I should post a happy selfie so people see I am fine. I took a quick photo near the window and added a caption about balance. My face looked smooth and sure. The caption read like a rule someone else should follow. After lunch, the office felt warmer. People returned with plastic forks and soft laughter. The big printer started spooling a long job and humming. I tapped cells and pretended to work. A teammate mentioned Luca by name and asked if he was the DJ with the silver chain. I said he was a friend who respected my laugh. The teammate made a small sound and turned back to her screen. I felt misunderstood and, because I hate that feeling, I pushed the story again. I said my husband punished me with silence at home and that I needed light to breathe. No one argued. Their silence was not support, but I treated it as approval. An email from Ms. Byrne arrived with a short summary of guidelines. It was polite and clean. I replied with thanks and a smiley face. Then I texted Mari that HR was oppressive and that I would not be quiet because quiet is how women disappear. She replied that I should schedule another night out and teased an idea for a caption about freedom. I liked the idea and asked about outfits. She sent 3 photos. I chose the red dress that holds light. As the afternoon slipped toward its end, Damien passed my desk and paused. He said he would like a quick word before I left, just a temperature check. His tone was kind but firm. The big printer behind him began to spool again, sheets sliding into the tray one after another. I felt a sweep of attention from nearby desks, the kind that is not loud but still public. The sound of paper fed the air like a drum. I smiled with my best calm and stood. The rooftop bar sat above the city like a stage, and I climbed onto it with my red dress and a promise to myself. The air was warm, the music soft at first, and the light made everyone look kinder. Murray waved from a high table and said the view looked like freedom. I said freedom finally looked like me. She lifted her glass and said we were overdue. I said yes, and let the sweetness of that word stretch until I could not hear doubt anymore. People around us smiled the way strangers do when they expect a show. Luca worked the corner with an easy grin, moving between the DJ booth and the bar like he owned the air. He asked if I wanted a drink with lime, and I said I wanted something light that looked good in photos. He said he had just the thing. I liked that he understood the need for surface. When he returned, he asked how married life was. I said it was neat and low sugar and hard to swallow. He said that sounded dull. I said I was trying to wake up. He laughed and pointed at the skyline. I felt seen, which is a drug that does not ask your age. Mary filmed the first little clip and told me to hold the glass higher. She said, "Light loves a confident chin." I said my chin had waited for this night. People nearby heard and clapped, like the start of a joke. A girl I did not know raised her phone and asked if we wanted a group shot. I said yes because strangers are easier to please than family. The song shifted into something louder. Someone shouted about a toast, and the sound went around the tables like a spark. I told Mari I needed proof that I was still fun, and she said proof arrives when you stop asking permission. She used the exact words she knows I like. I absorbed them and repeated them back to myself. I said it was not cheating to dance. I said it was not betrayal to laugh. I said it was self-care to stay out and post the proof. It felt good to build a legal case in my head, even when there was no court, only a roof and phones. Luca asked if I liked the track he mixed. I said I liked anything that made me forget the quiet of my hallway at night. A table of playgroup moms from another part of the city appeared, glittering and loud. One recognized Mari and said she loved our stories. I said we were just surviving with humor. She asked if my husband liked clubs. I said he did not like crowds or smoke or messy laughs. She made a face and said I deserved better energy. I said I knew. I did not say I had a small child at home who drew sons for both of us. I held the glass higher and let that thought fall away. The music lifted, and Luca pointed his phone at the room for a wide pan. He asked if anyone wanted to shout a line for the video. I said life after rules, because that phrase felt like a door opening. People repeated it for the camera. A man I did not know banged on the table in rhythm. A chant began, light at first and then louder. Life after rules, life after rules. I watched myself laughing in someone else's screen and believed I was exactly the woman I wanted to be. The chant met the wind and bounced off the glass walls. Mari nudged me toward the smoking patio to cool down. Outside, the night smelled like sweet ash and laundry soap from nearby vents. Luca stepped out with us and asked if I ever danced at home. I said my husband avoided dancing like tax audits. Luca smirked and said the city had room for practice. I said the city did not judge. He leaned on the rail and said he liked my laugh because it told the truth. I said my laugh had been in storage for years. He lit a cigarette for a stranger and kept his eyes on me like a soft hand. I liked that gaze because it was uncomplicated. Phones were everywhere. A pair of younger women filmed a slow sweep across the patio, and for a second the camera paused on me and Luca. I understood how images create stories. I also knew I could claim coincidence later if needed. Mary asked if I was sure about the angles. I said angles are neutral. It is the caption that decides the mood. She nodded and sent a photo to our group chat with a heart. I said I would not hide anymore. Luca asked if I wanted water. I said I wanted another song first. Back inside, the beat grew heavier. A stranger asked if it was my birthday. I said it might as well be. Someone asked if I was single. I said I was complicated. The answer slid out like I had practiced it. I thought of Niall at home, steady and careful, and I felt a flush of anger at his neatness. I told myself neat men push their wives toward edges and then blame the wind. It is a pleasing story, and easy to sell to a crowd that wants a villain to clink glasses against. At 3 a.m, the rooftop closed in gentle ways. Lights rose, music softened, staff moved with practiced smiles. Mari said we should grab a rideshare before surge pricing. I said one last photo, the kind that looks like goodbye, but is really a beginning. Luca drifted back to the booth and waved without promise. I pretended I did not notice the lack of promise. In the elevator, Murray asked if I was okay. I said I felt alive. He said he'd been recording all of his interactions since Kyle's confession. For his protection. For documentation purposes. He put the earbud back in and continued his jog, leaving my mother and me standing there on the embankment. I felt a new kind of fear settle over me. He was documenting everything, every conversation, every interaction. He was building a case, and I was handing him evidence every single day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those folders in Adrian's car, about the voice recorder clipped to his collar, about the fact that he'd known for 3 weeks and I'd been completely oblivious. Around 2 a.m, I got out of bed and went to Adrian's home office. He'd been sleeping in the guest room since Sunday, and I could hear him snoring softly through the closed door. The office was neat and organized, just like everything else about Adrian. His desk was clear except for his laptop, a lamp, and a cup full of pens. I sat down in his chair and tried to open the laptop. Password protected, of course. I opened the desk drawers, files, office supplies, old bills. Nothing interesting. Then I tried the bottom drawer. It was locked. I went to our bedroom and found a bobby pin in my jewelry box. It took me 10 minutes of fumbling in the dark, but I finally managed to pop the lock. Inside the drawer was a slim binder. I pulled it out and opened it. My blood ran cold. The binder contained a timeline, a detailed, meticulously organized timeline of my affair with Kyle. March 15th. Tess claims she has a late meeting with a doctor's office in the city. Location data shows she was at Kyle's apartment complex from 6:30 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. March 22nd. Tess says she's meeting a client for dinner. Credit card statement shows a purchase at a liquor store near Kyle's apartment. April 3. Tess comes home with her hair wet, says she got caught in the rain. Weather data shows no rain that day in our area or near her office. Kyle's apartment has a pool. There were dozens of entries, each one cross-referenced with evidence. Screenshots of texts that I thought I'd deleted. Location data from our shared phone plan, credit card purchases, calendar discrepancies. At the back of the binder were witness statements. Not formal statements, just notes. But there were names I recognized. A neighbor who'd seen me at Kyle's building. A colleague who'd mentioned seeing Kyle and me having coffee when I'd told Adrian I was working. The woman from my gym who'd asked how I knew Kyle when she saw us talking in the parking lot. Adrian had documented everything. Not in anger, not in hurt, just methodically, clinically, like he was preparing a case, which I realized with horror he was. I put the binder back and locked the drawer, my hands shaking so badly I could barely work the bobby pin. I went back to bed but didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to fix this, how to fight back. The next evening, there was a science fair at Owen's school. I'd promised him weeks ago that I'd be there. Adrian texted me earlier in the day saying he'd be bringing Owen from his parents' house and that we should maintain a civil appearance for our son's sake. I arrived at the community centre hall, where the fair was being held. Tables lined the room, each with a child's project displayed. Parents milled around with paper plates of cookies and cups of punch. I found Owen's table near the middle. His project was about volcanoes. He'd built a papier-mâché model and written a report on different types of volcanic eruptions. He'd worked so hard on it, but when I walked up, Owen barely looked at me. He mumbled hello and then turned to talk to his friend at the next table. Adrian was standing on the other side of the display, arms crossed, watching me. I tried to compliment Owen's project, but he just shrugged. He seemed uncomfortable, distant. Other parents were staring. Some whispered to each other. One mother I'd always been friendly with saw me and immediately turned away, steering her son toward a different table. Then Marcus appeared. He walked straight up to me, not bothering to lower his voice. He asked me if I was proud of myself, if I was happy with what I'd done to his brother and nephew. I tried to respond quietly, aware of all the people around us. I said this was between Adrian and me, that it was private. Marcus said I'd made it public when I confessed in front of the whole family. He said I'd humiliated Adrian, betrayed him, and destroyed Owen's sense of stability. He said Adrian had been nothing but a good husband and father, and I'd thrown it all away for a cheap fling. People were openly staring now. A few parents had their phones out. Someone might have been recording. I said I made a mistake and I was trying to fix it. Marcus said you don't fix betrayal. You live with the consequences. Adrian stepped forward and put a hand on Marcus's arm. He said this wasn't the place. Marcus looked like he wanted to say more, but he backed off. I tried to talk to Adrian, but he said we'd discuss everything through proper channels. Then he turned to Owen and suggested they go look at the other projects. They walked away together, leaving me standing alone at Owen's volcano table while parents whispered and stared. I left the school quickly, my face burning with shame. That night, I was in bed trying to read when I heard voices. I crept to the bedroom door and opened it quietly. Adrian was on the stairwell landing, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in low tones. I could only catch fragments. Filing dates confirmed for Friday. Temporary orders ready to go. Custody evaluation scheduled. My heart was pounding. I moved closer, staying in the shadows. Adrian said something about everything being documented, that they'd proceed on schedule. A notification lit up his phone screen. Even from where I was standing, I could read it. Friday, 8:15 a.m., final signatures. Friday was 3 days away. Adrian ended the call and turned. He saw me standing there in the dim hallway. He asked if I needed something. His voice was calm, neutral. I asked who he was talking to. He said it was handled. I asked what was happening Friday. He said I'd find out when it was time. Then he walked to the guest room and closed the door. I heard the lock click. I stood there in the dark hallway, realizing that whatever was coming, I was completely powerless to stop it. The next few days were excruciating. Adrian moved through the house like a ghost. He was polite when necessary, silent when possible. He didn't argue. He didn't engage. He just existed in the same space as me, counting down to whatever Friday held. On Wednesday evening, I found him on the balcony, watching the sunset. I stepped outside, pulling my cardigan around me against the cool breeze. I tried to start a conversation about working through this together, about what was best for Owen, about the 9 years we'd spent building a life. Adrian let me talk. When I finished, he said we were past that point, that decisions had been made. I asked what decisions. He said everything would be handled properly, through legal channels. I felt panic rising in my chest. I asked if he was filing for divorce. He said I'd receive formal notification. I started to cry. I said I'd made a terrible mistake, but we could fix this. We could go to counseling. We could rebuild trust. He said some things couldn't be rebuilt. That trust wasn't a structure you repaired, it was a foundation. And once the foundation cracked, the whole building was compromised. I begged him to give me a chance. He said he'd given me 9 years. I'd wasted them. Then he went inside, leaving me alone on the balcony. The next day, I went to the supermarket to pick up groceries. I was in the checkout line, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I heard someone say my name. I looked up and saw Clara, Adrian's mother. She had a cart full of groceries and an expression that could freeze fire. I tried to smile. I said it was good to see her. She didn't return the greeting. She said she wanted to make something very clear. She said Owen would need stability and protection in the coming months. She said Adrian would ensure he had both. I said I was Owen's mother, that I loved him. Clara said being a mother required putting your child first. She said I'd put my own desires first, and Owen had paid the price with confusion and pain. I tried to explain that the affair was a mistake, that it had nothing to do with how I felt about Owen. Clara said everything parents did affected their children. She said Owen had cried himself to sleep 3 nights this week, asking when Mommy and Daddy would stop being mad at each other. My eyes filled with tears. I said I'd fix it. Clara said it was too late to fix it. It was time to manage the damage. She said Adrian had consulted with a child psychologist, that they'd discussed what custody arrangement would provide Owen with the most stability. She said I should prepare myself for what was coming. I asked what she meant. She said I'd know soon enough. Then she paid for her groceries and left without another word. I stood there, abandoning my half-filled cart, and walked out of the store in a daze. That evening, I needed to clear my head. I took the metro downtown, thinking I'd walk around for a while, maybe stop for coffee. I was standing on the platform waiting for the train when I saw him. Adrian was waiting at the same platform, about 20 feet away. He wasn't alone. There was a woman with him, late 40s, professional-looking, carrying a leather briefcase. They were reviewing documents together. The woman was pointing at specific sections, and Adrian was nodding, occasionally making notes on a tablet. I moved closer, trying to see what they were looking at without being obvious. The woman said something about filing deadlines and procedures. Adrian asked a question about temporary orders and custody schedules. The woman answered in detail, but I couldn't hear all of it over the sound of the approaching train. Adrian's phone lit up with a text. The preview was visible for just a second before he swiped it away. Documents ready for service. Confirmed for Friday at 12:30. Friday at 12:30, tomorrow. The train arrived. Adrian and the woman boarded, still deep in conversation. Adrian never looked in my direction, never acknowledged my presence. I watched through the train window as they found seats and continued reviewing documents. Adrian opened a folder on his tablet. I could just make out the label. Final service copy. The train pulled away, and I stood there on the platform, my mind racing. Service. Legal documents were being served tomorrow at 12:30. Where? To who? How? I tried calling Adrian. Straight to voicemail. I tried texting. Read receipts were turned off. I called Sienna. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding hesitant. I asked if Adrian had contacted her about anything. She was quiet for a long moment, then said she couldn't talk about it, that she'd been asked to provide some information but couldn't discuss it with me. I felt betrayed. I asked if she was on his side now. She said there weren't sides, there was just the truth. Then she hung up. I rode the metro home in a fog of dread. When I got to the house, Adrian's car wasn't in the driveway. I went inside and found a note on the kitchen counter. "I'll be staying at my parents' house tonight. See you tomorrow." See you tomorrow. When? Where? For what? I barely slept that night. I kept checking my phone, waiting for something, some clue about what was coming. At 6 a.m, I finally gave up and made coffee. My hands were shaking as I poured it. At 8 o'clock, I received a text from Adrian. "Please meet me at Memorial Hospital cafeteria at 12:30. We need to discuss arrangements for Owen." Memorial Hospital, where Adrian worked, the cafeteria. At least it would be neutral ground, public, safe. I spent the morning getting ready. I dressed carefully, a nice blouse, slacks, minimal makeup. I wanted to look put together, reasonable, like someone who could co-parent effectively. At noon, I drove to the hospital. I parked and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one more time. I could do this. We could work out an arrangement. We could be mature about this. I walked through the hospital entrance, following signs to the cafeteria. It was a large space, with scattered tables, vending machines along one wall, a few doctors and nurses grabbing quick lunches. I saw Adrian immediately. He was sitting at a corner table. He wasn't alone. There were 3 people with him, an older man in a suit I didn't recognize, the professional woman from the metro platform with her briefcase, and Dr. Patel, one of Adrian's colleagues from the hospital administration. My steps slowed. This wasn't a discussion about arrangements. This was something else entirely. I approached the table slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. All 4 of them watched me walk toward them. Adrian's expression was completely neutral. The woman with the briefcase gave me a professional nod. I asked Adrian what this was, why all these people were here. The professional woman stood and extended her hand. She introduced herself as Jennifer Hartwick, family law attorney. The older man, she said, was a certified process server. I felt my blood turn to ice. Jennifer gestured to the empty chair. She suggested I sit down. I did, my legs suddenly weak. She explained in a calm and measured voice that I was being formally served with divorce papers. The process server handed me a large envelope. I took it with shaking hands. I looked at Adrian. He was watching me, but his face showed nothing. No anger, no sadness, just finality. Jennifer continued. She said the envelope contained a petition for divorce, as well as immediate temporary orders that had been approved by a judge that morning. I opened the envelope. The top document was titled Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. Below Adrian's name and mine were multiple stamps and signatures. Jennifer began explaining the temporary orders. Her voice was professional, clinical, like she was discussing the weather. She said Adrian had been granted temporary primary physical custody of Owen, pending a comprehensive custody evaluation. I would be permitted supervised visitation twice per week, with supervision provided by a court-approved third party. I tried to interrupt. I tried to say that I was Owen's mother, that this was excessive. Jennifer held up a hand and continued. She said all joint financial accounts had been frozen as of this morning. Adrian would maintain access to household operating funds. I would receive a stipend for living expenses, but all major purchases or withdrawals would require court approval. She said I had 30 days to remove my personal belongings from the marital residence. All removal sessions would be supervised. Adrian would retain possession of the house and primary vehicles. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. I looked through the documents. There were dozens of pages, exhibits, evidence. There was a timeline of my affair, dates, locations, times. Every lie I'd told cross-referenced with proof, location data, credit card statements, Witness observations. There were screenshots of text messages between Kyle and me. Conversations I thought had been deleted. I saw my own words on those pages, words that made me seem callous and calculating. Complaints about Adrian, jokes about sneaking around, excitement about our secret. There were witness statements. Sienna had provided a statement. In it, she described conversations where I'd admitted the affair had been going on for months, where I'd said I wasn't sure if I wanted to end it, where I'd laughed about Adrian being clueless. I hadn't laughed. I'd been anxious, conflicted. But reading it in black and white, in legal language, it sounded cruel. There were notes from neighbors who'd seen me at Kyle's building, from the woman at my gym who'd noticed Kyle and me together multiple times, from a bartender at a place near Kyle's apartment who recognized us as regulars. I looked up at Adrian, tears streaming down my face. I asked how he could do this, how he could gather all this evidence, prepare all these documents, and never say a word. He spoke for the first time since I'd sat down. His voice was quiet but firm. He said I'd had 3 months to say something, 3 months to be honest. Instead, I'd lied every single day. He said when Kyle confessed, he'd had 2 choices: confront me immediately or prepare for what needed to happen. He'd chosen preparation. I said I confessed. At his birthday dinner. That should count for something, Jennifer interjected. She said the confession had come after the affair had ended, after I'd been caught by Kyle's admission, and in a public setting that appeared designed to manipulate Adrian into forgiveness. She said it wasn't genuine remorse, it was damage control. Dr. Patel spoke up then. He said the hospital administration had been made aware of the situation to ensure there was no workplace disruption. He said Adrian's professional reputation needed protection, given that Kyle had been known to many hospital staff through social events. I felt humiliated. Adrian had told his workplace. Everyone knew. Jennifer handed me another document. She said it was a notice of a comprehensive custody evaluation. A court-appointed psychologist would be conducting interviews with both parents, with Owen, and with relevant family members. The evaluation would assess which custody arrangement was in Owen's best interest. She said factors the evaluator would consider included: stability of each parent's home environment, each parent's decision-making regarding the child's welfare, any behavior that demonstrated poor judgment or prioritization of personal desires over the child's needs. The implication was clear. My affair would be framed as evidence of poor judgment and selfish prioritization. I tried to argue. I said I'd made a mistake in my marriage, but that didn't make me a bad mother, that Owen needed his mother. Clara's voice came from behind me. I turned and saw her standing a few feet away, Marcus beside her. I hadn't even noticed them in the cafeteria. Clara said Owen needed stability. He needed honesty. He needed parents who put his needs first. She said Adrian had always done that. She asked if I could say the same. I couldn't answer. Marcus said they'd all be providing statements for the custody evaluation, that they'd be honest about what they'd witnessed, about my confession at the birthday dinner, about the fact that I'd been lying for months while Adrian worked and cared for Owen. I felt trapped, surrounded. This wasn't a meeting. It was an ambush. But then I realized it wasn't an ambush. I'd been given notice. Adrian had texted me where to be and when. I'd chosen to come. This was execution. The final step in a process Adrian had been planning for 3 weeks. Jennifer said I had 30 days to respond to the petition through my own legal counsel. She said all future communication regarding Owen or the divorce should go through attorneys. She handed me her business card. Adrian stood. He told me that Owen was safe and happy at his parents' house, that he was shielded from the worst of this, that when the time was right, they'd explain what was happening in an age-appropriate way. He said I could reach him only through Jennifer's office, that he'd changed his phone number, that he needed to protect his peace and his son. Then he walked out of the cafeteria. Clara and Marcus followed. Dr. Patel nodded to me professionally and left to return to work. I sat there, documents spread on the table in front of me, with Jennifer Hartwick and the process server as witnesses. Jennifer said she understood this was difficult, but she said Adrian had made his decision, and it was in everyone's best interest to proceed smoothly and efficiently. She said fighting would only cost time and money, and emotional energy that could be better spent on Owen. She said if I had any questions about the process, I should consult with my own attorney. Then she packed up her briefcase and left. The process server handed me a receipt, confirming I'd been served, and left as well. I sat alone in that hospital cafeteria, surrounded by doctors and nurses going about their day, holding papers that detailed the complete collapse of my marriage. A few hospital staff members were watching, some with sympathy, some with judgment. One nurse I vaguely recognized from a hospital holiday party was openly staring. I looked down at the documents again, at my own words in those text messages, at the timeline of lies, at the witness statements. This was what I'd done. This was the evidence of my choices. I'd thought my confession at Adrian's birthday dinner was brave, honest, a path to healing. But Adrian had known all along. He'd known, and he'd let me plan my big moment. He'd let me stand up in front of family and confess my sins, thinking I was controlling the narrative. The whole time he'd been holding these papers, this evidence, these plans. I'd thought I was being honest, but I'd just been giving him the final piece he needed, a public admission in front of witnesses that could be used in court. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Jennifer Hartwick's assistant. We have your email on file and will be sending you digital copies of all documents served today. Please confirm receipt." I typed back a shaky confirmed. Another buzz, this time from Sienna. "I'm sorry it came to this. I love you, but I couldn't lie for you. Owen deserves the truth." I put my phone face down on the table. I sat there for a long time, watching hospital staff come and go, holding the papers that proved my marriage was over. The confession I'd thought would save everything had actually sealed my fate, because while I'd been rehearsing my moment of honesty, Adrian had been documenting my months of lies. And in the end, the lies had been louder than the confession. I gathered the papers, shoved them back into the envelope, and stood on shaky legs. As I walked out of the hospital cafeteria, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who'd destroyed her own life and blamed everyone else until it was too late to fix it. The door slid open, and I stepped out into the afternoon sun. Behind me, in that hospital where Adrian worked, where people respected him and trusted him, he'd just taken back every piece of power I'd tried to steal with my confession. And all I could do was walk away, holding proof that honesty without accountability was just another form of manipulation. A manipulation Adrian had seen coming from miles away. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.